How does a child become the scapegoat in the family? How does the narcissistic family system actually create a scapegoat child? Hi, I'm Anita. I am a recovering scapegoat child of two narcissistic parents, one who's passed away and one who lives in my home. That is an experience in itself. Before I go on, please subscribe to my channel and also follow me in my Facebook group called Mother Wounds. We'd love to have you. It's not a place to feel bad about what's going on in your life. It's a place of healing. It's a place of reflection. And it's a place for you to find out why these things happen to you and why you may still have feelings of being unworthy or just not sufficient enough in the things that you want to do in your life. So let's talk about the subject. How can a narcissistic family system actually create a scapegoat child? What is a scapegoat child? What does that really mean? It's the feeling of being undeserving, and you are the person in the family that every problem the family has, they point it towards you. I feel really, really passionate about this topic because I didn't realize I had a name for what I felt all of my life within my family system. I didn't realize I was in a narcissistic family system. Actually, until my mother passed away and my elderly father moved in with me. That's when I started to piece things together and educate myself on what I've been feeling all my life, but what was actually going on in my home after my father moved in with me. So, why does the family create a scapegoat child? I can't speak for every narcissistic family system, but the family I had, the reason that the scapegoat child, which was me, was created was because of infidelity, um, because of crossing social lines in a time that racial barriers were there, but also my father is not from this country and I'm from the South. So when I really sit back and think about why did I have to become the scapegoat child? I was the scapegoat child because I was the product of an adulterous affair in the 70s. So if I'm the scapegoat child, every problem that the family had was because of me. Instead of adults taking accountability for the decisions that they made, I assume in their minds it was easier to make me the problem. How do you create this scapegoat child? What do you do on a regular basis to make this child start to feel unworthy? Inconsistent parenting, definitely. I never could do anything right. I was never praised. Always having or feeling lack or less than the golden child. I can remember just a really quick story. Christmas, I would say ninth or 10th grade. And Christmases in my house was always a little interesting anyway. But this particular Christmas, I remember my mother coming to me and saying, "There's not enough money for you for Christmas. I'll get your Christmas presents after Christmas because I get paid before you go back to school." And I remember saying, "Okay." She said, "Your brother's younger and Christmas is going to mean more to him than it would mean to you anyway." That made a lot of sense to me at that moment and how she presented it. But I remember that Christmas morning, and I remember sitting there watching him open all his gifts. And I had to wait a week later to get my gifts. And now that I'm a parent, I would never have asked a child to do that. I would have taken the money that I had, I would have split it in half, and I would have made sure everyone had something. And even to today, that has psychologically bothered me so much. I literally take my Christmas budget and I still split it between the older kids. The younger one still gets more, mainly because she's a girl, but and because she's so much younger than the other ones. But I still mentally split what I have to make sure everyone has or gets something. And I make sure everyone has 5 presents, 10 presents. There's not one that's going to have 15 presents and another one that's going to have 2. And now I'm understanding I was so psychologically damaged from that decision that I had to make as a child. I don't want anybody in my family to ever feel that way. So that's just something that always comes to mind because I'm constantly questioning myself as to how did I become the scapegoat child? Why was I always to blame for everything? The scapegoat child can never do anything right. And even if it's very evident that they're being blamed for something that they did not do, it does not seem to matter. I always got accused of taking my mother's makeup or using her lip gloss or using her brush. And I would stand there and say, I didn't touch your stuff. Right now, today, I don't touch anybody's stuff in the house. I don't go in my daughter's room. I don't go through her stuff. I don't go through my husband's stuff. I don't touch anybody's stuff because I'm so terrified of being blamed for something that I did not do. I just don't do anything at all. So these are some psychological things that I'm learning to get past because I have the foundation for why this stuff was happening to me in the first place. One of the first steps to recovery is you got to make sense of what happened. I've literally lived my whole life in this fuzzy gray bubble. I knew something wasn't right. I knew things didn't feel right, but I didn't know this thing had a name. When I started educating myself about narcissism, narcissistic parents, the narcissistic family system, it all started to make sense. So the first step to recovery is understanding what actually happened. You have to dig deep. You have to go in. I got a therapist. We didn't go into narcissism as much, but she definitely started to work with me on trauma bonds and why I kept entertaining my mother and entertaining the family and continue to go into that fold and into that space, knowing that I was going to be mistreated. Like I expected to be mistreated if I went home for the holidays. When my family and I decided to move back down south to be closer to my elderly parents, they rejected me. We were going to build a home specifically for them to be able to move in with us if they needed it. They rejected that. It still had not clicked in my head that this is not right. They had no desire to live with me at all. None. We offered to take their home and rebuild it, gut it out, give them a brand new kitchen, brand new bathroom, separate the rooms so it'd be more functional, add a washroom, add closets. Rejected because they wanted to make sure when they passed away, I would not have access to that home. It would go to the golden child. So my parents lived in poverty, basically, because they didn't want my help. The house was raggedy. The back of the deck, when you walked in, was caving in. You had to walk very, very carefully so you would not fall through. There was no central heat and air. The bathtub, when you walked into the bathroom, the floors actually leaned and slanted down as you walked in. They didn't want our help. And it still didn't click in my head that this was a narcissistic family system and I was a scapegoat. I just thought they didn't like me. So we built a home less than 2.5 hours from their house. And my mother never came to see my home. Can you imagine your mother never comes to see your brand new home? A home that you tried to build around the needs that she would have one day. They were just not interested. And sadly, my father lives with me now. But if my mother had not passed away and things did not transpire the way they did, he still would not have set foot into my home. So being a scapegoat child is very damning to your mental. It's very hurtful. It's a hurtful position to be in. I've taken so much from them from an emotional standpoint that the pain, it still hurts. It still hurts. But because I've educated myself and started to understand what this narcissistic brain actually does and how they think and how they see things, it really gives me comfort. It really, really does. That's one of the reasons I started the Facebook group Mother Wounds. I really want people to have a space where they can communicate how they feel, communicate some of the things that have happened in their lives, but also find a space for healing, a space for answers, a space to ask questions, and a space to become the person that they were supposed to become outside of that narcissistic family system. Now, one of the second things for recovery is creating distance between you and your narcissistic abusive parent. I tried to do that with my mother 3 times in her life. The first 2 times I got pulled back in, but now I know I got pulled back in due to trauma bonds. The third and last time was when she was pretty much in transition of dying. And it wasn't so much as how she was dying, it was something inside of me said, this is my last chance to save how she's going to make me feel. As she transitions and passes away, I'm going to be the one left dealing with how she's going to make me feel at this time. And I chose myself to go no contact. That was one of the best things I could have ever done in my life. I do not regret it. I do not regret it at all. So the second step to recovering from being a scapegoat child is to create distance. Now, the ironic thing about this is now my narcissistic father had to move in with me. That creates a lot of anxiety, and I've had to learn certain techniques and strategies in order to deal with this situation because he is elderly. He's really not capable of living on his own. He thinks he is, but he's really, really not. So I tell people all the time, when you're making decisions about what you have to do from a no contact, low contact situation with a narcissistic parent, you have to make the decision of what you can live with after they're gone. And that's the only thing that keeps me going from one day to the next. Is it challenging? Yes, it is. Had I known almost 2 years ago what I know today, I would never have brought him into my home. I would never have brought him into my home. But the thing about life is, once you start asking and seeking and knocking for questions and educating yourself, things begin to become very, very clear. And you start to have a fundamental understanding of why these things are happening anyway. So where I would have been 5 years ago, I would not have understood why I made that mistake of bringing him into my home. But now I really have the ability to not only educate myself, but actually see how deep this narcissism actually is and how mentally programmed they are to hurt you, make your life miserable, and to continue to demean you as much as they possibly can. And when they start to realize that you're onto them, and they're losing their control, things start to shift. They don't change. They shift their behaviors, they shift their actions, and they become weaker. So that's just a little tip with that. The third thing is learn to defy everything you've been told about yourself as a scapegoat child. That can be very, very challenging because depending on how long you've been in that role, for me, it's been all of my life. Everything that I had learned was a lie. Everything that I was told was a lie. Even down to my father. The father who's in my home right now, who is the narcissist, I was raised to be his stepchild. For the first 48 years of my life, I thought that was my stepdad. That's my actual biological father. That's just how deep this narcissism family system went in my home. So the third step of recovery is learning to defy everything you've ever been told about yourself, everything you've ever been told to create that scapegoat child inside of this narcissistic family system. Learn to defy it. Learn to move it out of your space, your mental space, out of your emotional space. Find healing. Like I said, I have a therapist. I read a lot. I pray a lot. And because I'm educating myself, I've learned to find ways to make my life the life that it was supposed to be. So please click and subscribe and follow me so you can get all the updates as I go through my journey of recovering from being a scapegoat child. And look for me on Facebook. Look for Mother Wounds. We're a Facebook group. We're growing. We're learning about this narcissistic family system, what being a scapegoat child actually means, and how to recover from that.